The alarm on my suit screamed before I even saw the crack spreading across the cave wall. I had 30 seconds before the whole limestone ceiling came down on both of us, and the creature beside me was too weak to move. My name is Ethan Wren, and 3 weeks earlier, I had landed on a planet called Vivarath, expecting nothing but rock samples and silence. Instead, I found something that changed the way I understood loss. I dropped to my knees beside the massive body coiled in the dust. She was easily 15 meters long, gray and dull, her breathing slow and uneven, like a machine running on its last reserve of power. I had spent nights studying the old orbital scans, and none of them prepared me for how fragile something this enormous could look. The ceiling groaned again. Dust rained down onto her scales. I grabbed the strap of my emergency thermal blanket and wedged it under her jaw, trying to shield the parts of her body that still carried heat. She opened one eye, filmed over and tired, and let out a sound that was somewhere between a groan and a whisper. I had no time to explain anything. I hooked my arm under a fold of her neck and pulled with everything I had, dragging her a few feet toward the tunnel mouth, just as a slab of rock the size of a transport crate slammed down where she had been lying. Dust filled the air. My ears rang from the impact. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she exhaled, a long, shuddering breath, and pressed her head gently against my shoulder, as if she understood exactly what had almost happened. That single moment told me more about her people than any scanner ever could. Her name, once I built a working translation device from fragments of old survey data, was Ashen Hollow. She was the last living elder of a species that had once ruled the skies of this world. Dragons, real ones, not the kind from old stories, but creatures built with an internal furnace in their chest that let them breathe controlled fire. That fire was not just a weapon. It powered their body heat, lit their skin in the dark, and allowed their eggs to develop. Without it, nothing in their species could continue. And the fire was gone. All of it. Every dragon on Viharath had gone cold. Ashen Hollow explained it to me slowly, through broken symbols and long pauses, while I sat in the mouth of the collapsing cave trying to steady my breathing. Some group of visitors, long before humans ever discovered this system, had stripped the deep crust of the planet for a rare mineral. That mineral had been the fuel source for the internal reactor inside every dragon's body. When it disappeared, their fire began to fade, generation after generation, until nothing was left but old bodies with no strength to fly and no eggs left to hatch. They had not been defeated by an enemy. They had simply run out of fuel, slowly, quietly, until an entire species became a memory even to itself. I sat there in the dust with my hands shaking, not from fear of the cave collapsing, but from the weight of what I had just learned. I fix things for a living. Reactors, generators, broken systems in places too remote for anyone else to reach. I had never once thought that skill could apply to something breathing beside me. That night, back in my shuttle, I could not sleep. I ran calculations until my eyes burned, comparing the mineral composition from the old orbital surveys to compounds I already carried in my repair kits. If their internal reactor needed a specific catalyst to burn, then this was not a mystery. It was a supply problem, and supply problems were something I actually knew how to solve. The next morning I called the station and asked for equipment no engineer had ever requested for a geological survey. The technician on the other end laughed at first, thinking I was joking. I was not. It took me 12 days to synthesize a rough version of the compound Ashen Hollow's body needed. Every attempt before that failed. Twice my mixture overheated and nearly destroyed my portable lab. Once I miscalculated the concentration so badly that if I had given it to her, it could have caused serious harm instead of healing her. On the 13th day, I finally created a slurry stable enough to test. I remember kneeling beside her in the pale light of the valley, my hands trembling as I prepared the feeding tube. She watched me the entire time, her tired eyes following every movement, as if she somehow trusted a stranger from another world. more than she trusted the silence she had lived in for centuries. I fed her slowly, testing her reaction after every small amount, terrified of pushing too fast. For 3 days nothing happened. Her breathing stayed the same, her body temperature barely changed. I began to think I had failed completely, that I had built false hope out of nothing but desperation. Then on the 4th night, under 2 rising moons, I heard a sound I will never forget. A deep crack, like dry wood catching fire after being soaked for years. Heat bloomed across my sensors so fast I thought something had exploded. Ashin Hollow's throat lit up from the inside, orange and gold, spreading light across the entire valley floor. She let out a sound that started as pain and turned into something closer to a song. I stumbled back, my heart pounding, watching centuries of darkness break apart in seconds. She did not harm me. Even in that overwhelming moment, she curled her body carefully away from where I stood, as if some instinct told her to protect the fragile creature who had just given her back her fire. But the light did not stop there. Across the valley, hidden in hollows and caves I had not even explored yet, other dragons began to stir. Their skin, dull and lifeless for so long, began to glow faintly along old scars and ridges. One by one, distant shapes rose from the shadows, drawn toward the light like it was calling them home. I stood in the middle of that valley, surrounded by creatures large enough to crush me without effort, and felt no fear at all. Only wonder. Word of what happened reached the station faster than I expected. Within days, a team arrived to study the phenomenon, treating it as a scientific discovery worth documenting. I understood why, but something about turning Ashen Hollow and her people into research subjects unsettled me. They were not specimens. They were survivors. I stayed behind after the research team left, partly to monitor Ashen Hollow's recovery, and partly because I could not bring myself to leave yet. I watched her regain strength, day by day, her movements becoming steadier, her voice growing stronger. She began teaching younger dragons, ones barely able to stand, how to control the fire now burning inside them again. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the valley, I watched something remarkable happen. A small hatchling, freshly emerged from an egg that had been dormant for years, attempted its first breath of fire. It came out as a stumbling, weak puff of smoke, and the hatchling looked almost embarrassed. Ashen Hollow leaned down and released a controlled stream of flame beside it, guiding the young one gently, patiently, the way any parent might teach a child to walk. I realized then that this was not just about restoring biology, it was about restoring a way of life that had been silent for generations. Songs I could not fully translate echoed across the valley each night, passed from elder to hatchling, stories about a time when the sky belonged to them. Not everything was calm during those weeks. Varoth's terrain was unstable, prone to sudden tremors that could trigger rockfalls without warning. Twice more I found myself pulling dragons away from unstable ledges, my heart hammering as debris crashed down seconds after we moved. Each time, the danger felt real and immediate, a reminder that survival here was never guaranteed, even after the fire returned. During one of those tremors, I nearly lost my footing on a narrow path above a deep ravine. My boot slipped on loose gravel, and for a terrifying second, I thought I would fall. A young dragon, barely more than a hatchling, shot forward and caught my arm gently between 2 claws, steadying me until I regained my balance. It was a small moment, but it stayed with me longer than almost anything else that happened on that planet. By the time my assignment came to an end, the valley had transformed completely. Where once there had been silence and stillness, now there was movement, light, and sound. Dragons soared above the cliffs again, their wings catching the glow of their own fire as they tested muscles unused for centuries. Ashen Hollow found me on my last night there, standing near my shuttle as I prepared to leave. She lowered her head until it rested gently in front of me, a gesture I had come to understand as her form of gratitude. I placed my hand against her scales, feeling the steady warmth radiating from her body, warmth that had not existed when I first found her. I did not consider myself a hero in any of this. I had not saved her people out of noble intention. I had simply seen a broken system and refused to walk away from it, the same way I had refused to walk away from broken machines my entire career. But somewhere between the failed experiments and the terrifying nights of rock slides and fire returning to the sky, I had stopped seeing them as a project and started seeing them as something closer to family. When my shuttle finally lifted off the surface, I looked down at the valley one last time. Fire glowed steadily from dozens of caves and ledges, spreading light across the darkness like stars that had fallen to the ground and decided to stay. I did not create that fire. I only found the smallest spark still alive, buried under years of silence, waiting for someone stubborn enough to believe it could burn again. And somehow, that was enough.